In this video, we will take a look at file security, that is file permissions. There is also a more complicated way of implementing file security called access control list, which is not enabled by default, but you can put it in, and maybe if we get a chance we will talk about access control list, but for now we will have just simple file permissions. That's all we're going to discuss in this video. So file security limits access to files on a file system. Unix system provides you with commands to specify who can access a file. Basically it says it's not exactly specifying which users, but you can say what can a whole group of users do, for example. So you can also specify what kind of operations can be done in a file. Once again, it's a lot cruder than it sounds. So you can only say whether you can read or write, or if you have an executable file, you can say whether you can execute it. So those are the kinds of things that operations that you can limit or enable. So typically you can see permissions with ls-l. So you've probably seen this already. I'm going to clear this and do ls-l. I have a bunch of things here. I have a link, I have a regular file, which is a tar file, and I have directories. So let's take a look at this tar file. So the first character tells you what kind of thing this is. In this case, a hyphen means, or a minus sign means that this is a regular file. And it's the next 9 characters that we're interested in for file permissions. R means read, and W means write. And this first set of 3 correspond to the owner of this file. So the owner in this case is the owner named uwrf. If I say who am I, it'll say uwrf. So I am the owner of this file, and this tells me that I can read and write. This next part says what the permissions are for the group, and it turns out this file is just in the group uwrf, which is really just one user, a group of just one user. That's me, or you if you're running the live DVD. So it says everyone in the group can read and write. You can add more users. You can add users to the group, and then this would allow people in the same group to read and write. And then finally, the last 3 characters correspond to everybody else on this system. So this says everybody on this system can read from this file. They cannot write, nor can they execute. It doesn't make sense to have execute permissions for files that are not executable. For example, this is not a program, it's data, so it cannot be executed. Let's take a quick look at a directory. In directories, you do see the execute option, or X option, permission, sorry. The X permission, just in the case of directories, just means that you can CD into it. So if you remove the X option, you can no longer CD into a directory. If you have the X, if let's say you have X over here, that means anyone on this system can CD into this directory. If you want to keep things private, you don't want people to poke around into your directories, make them not executable, and you'll see commands that allow you to do that. So that's a rough idea of permissions. So once again, ls-l displays the directory listing in full detail, that is with the permissions. Part of the detailed information is this pattern of rwx in each entry, which represents file permissions. The command that we use to change permissions is the chmod command, chmod. And you can see a man page for chmod. What it does, the chmod just means change file mode bits. Okay, and so there's a man page that we will look at later. Just want to point that out to you. So now comes this part about how we set permissions. So there's many ways to set permissions. There isn't just one way, and we will look at maybe a few of these. So we'll do that by examples. So let's say you want to have all users have the execute permission. For a file, you just say chmod a equals x, my file. Or you can say a plus x, that is, you add the x permission. Let's try that. So to try out these, I would just create an empty file, touch my, oops, I already have a my file, so my data. Okay, but let's take a look at the default. And you can also change the default options on files that you create. This particular my data file can be read and written to by me, read and written to by anyone in the my group, and can be read by everyone else. So let's say for whatever reason I want to give everybody execute permissions. You just type in this command. Okay, do ls-l after that, and what you've done is you've made this file execute only. Okay, so you cannot read or write it. So if you try to cat it, even though it's blank, it'll tell you that you have no permissions to cat this file. Okay. Let's take a look at our notes. Okay. So you can specify the new mode as a 3-digit number as well. So here, this is where you might have some, this might be a little bit harder to do. So this 3-digit number is actually octal digits. So you have to be careful about how you do this. This number is computed by adding together the numeric equivalents of each of these desired permissions. Read is 4, write is 2, and x is 1. So you can be pretty sure that this, if whatever number you get and you add up these. So for example, if you want to read, write, and execute permissions, that's 7. And same thing for group and everybody else. Others means everybody else on that system. So this is commonly what I would use if I want to set a file to be readable, writable, and executable by the owner, group, and others for everyone. This is what I typically do. I say chmod 777. What does this mean? This first 7 corresponds to user. The second 7 corresponds to the group, and then this third 7 corresponds to everybody else. And what does the 7 mean? 7 means 7 is you get 7 from 4 for read, 2 for write, 1 for x. If you only had read and write and not, read and execute and not write, you would get a 4 plus 1, which is 5. If you only had write and execute, you would get 3, that's 2 plus 1. If you had execute only, it's just 1. Read only is 4, and read write would be 6, and so on. Okay, so the number 777, each of the 7s is the result of adding the columns owner, group, or others numeric values. Alright, so now there's all kinds of different options that you can consider. Note that each of these numbers cannot go above 7. It has to be 7 or 0. You can make things 0 too. That means neither read nor write nor execute. Let's try that out. So chmod 000 my data, and say ls-l my data, you get 0. So that is possible. It's practically useless. Nobody can do anything with this file. Only by changing permissions can anyone do anything with this file now. But it's something that you can do. Linux doesn't stop you from doing something like this. Let's try one more. Let's try 121. Let's say 123. My data. So see if you can guess what 123 will do. So you can pause this video and try to figure out, and I'll show you the answer. Okay, so the X for the owner gives you the 1. The write for group gives you the 2. And write and execute, that's 2 plus 1, gives you the 3. Okay, so you might want to try these out. There's so many different combinations. I cannot possibly go over all the different combinations. Okay, so directories work in a similar way. They have permission modes just like files. They have slightly different meanings. So if the read for files means you can cat it, you can do more or head or use that as input to a program, things like that. And read permissions for directories means basically the same thing for directories, same things as files. You can use the ls command to list the file names in that directory, for example. So that's not the only thing, but that's one example. That is, you can actually read the entries in the directory. Write means that you can add and remove files from that directory. So if you took away the write option, you wouldn't be able to add a file to that directory or remove one. If you took away the read option for a directory, you wouldn't be able to ls the contents of that. Okay? And finally, execute. This is where it's mainly different. Execute or X permission means that you can use cd to change to that directory or use that directory name as part of a path name. So this one, if you cannot execute, if you cannot cd into that directory, you cannot cd into subdirectories either. So for example, if you say chmod 777 for a directory, that means everyone can read, can write to it, they can look at the contents of that directory, they can add a file to that directory, remove files from that directory, and they can cd into it for everyone. So try different combinations of this, of the chmod command. Just a quick word about the superuser. The superuser is a user who has privileged authorities not restricted by file permissions. So a system administrator, a superuser, can do things like establish new accounts, change passwords, so on. Almost always the superuser logs in as root. This is not always the case, but usually this is what the root user is, the superuser, and can do anything. They can read, write, or remove any file in the system, and they can shut down the system. Okay. So we looked at the crypt command. I think next we will be looking at remainder of chapter 14. We'll look at a few more miscellaneous Unix commands.